I grew up in a small house with a dusty courtyard where the call to prayer woke us every morning.
Layla, a devout Muslim woman, never expected her deepest questions to be answered in the most terrifying way, through death. After a violent car crash left her lifeless, she found herself drifting in darkness, facing a radiant figure who knew her every thought. What he said shattered everything she believed. This wasn't just a near-death experience, it was a divine encounter that changed her soul forever. What Layla saw, heard and felt will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Hold on a minute. If you have not subscribed to our channel, do well to subscribe, like, comment and share videos of this channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell.
My name is Layla Hassan. I'm 35 years old, born and raised in Dearborn, Michigan. I work as a medical assistant in a small clinic just outside of the city. I come from a devout Muslim family, traditional, respectful, and proud of our faith. My parents immigrated from Jordan in the early 80s and raised us with strong values, tight routines, and an unshakable belief in God. On the outside, I lived just like they taught me, modest, prayerful, obedient. I memorized verses, fasted every Ramadan, and never missed my 5 daily prayers. But on the inside, I was empty. It wasn't always that way. As a child, I felt wonder when I prayed. I believed that God heard me. I believed he was near. But as I grew older, life got quieter, darker. I began to feel like I was speaking into the air. My prayers became routine, like muscle memory. My heart wasn't in them anymore. I never told anyone that. I knew what would happen if I voiced doubt, rejection, disappointment, maybe even shame. So I smiled, I followed the rules, I buried the questions. The questions were always there though. Why did God feel so far? Why did I feel so unseen, even while doing everything right? Was I broken inside for feeling this way? I knew others who talked about peace and connection, but I only felt pressure, guilt, and confusion. I tried to convince myself I was just tired, that maybe this was just part of faith, dry season spiritual testing, but deep down I felt forgotten. My daily life looked fine. I worked, helped my parents, stayed out of trouble. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't bitter. I was just numb, like a passenger in my own life. I still read the Quran, but it didn't speak to me the way it used to. I still went to the mosque, but I always left feeling lonelier than when I came. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe God just wasn't listening. That's when the dreams started. At first they didn't make sense. Blinding light, whispered names, a man in white standing at a distance. Every time I tried to reach him, I'd wake up. Sometimes I'd hear music soft, like something ancient and beautiful, but I couldn't understand the words. Other times I'd feel a strange warmth around me, and then suddenly a crushing sadness. They were just dreams, I told myself, but they kept coming. I never told my family, not once. They would have panicked or started fasting for me, or brought in someone to pray over me. I didn't want that. I just wanted answers. I remember one morning sitting on my prayer mat, whispering my usual words, but my heart was silent. I looked out the window and thought, God, are you even there? Or am I just talking to a wall? And for the first time, that thought didn't scare me. It just made me feel tired. I was still following all the right steps, still showing up, but my soul felt like it was slipping further away. I didn't know it yet, but my questions were about to collide with something I never expected, something that would change everything I thought I knew about God. It happened on a Friday evening. I had just left work, later than usual. The sun was beginning to set, casting an orange glow across the sky. I remember looking up at it through my windshield, thinking how tired I felt. My head was heavy, my mind distant. I hadn't slept well in days. Those dreams, they had come again the night before. More intense this time, but I pushed them away. I had errands to run, dinner to help prepare. Life moves on. The roads were busy. I turned onto Warren Avenue, not far from my parents' house. I don't remember what song was playing on the radio, just that the streets were buzzing, and I felt oddly detached, like I was floating just behind my body. Then the world shifted. A blaring horn, screeching tires, a flash of headlights speeding toward my door. Metal crunched into metal, louder than thunder. Glass exploded around me. My body jerked hard to the side, the seatbelt digging into my shoulder. I couldn't breathe. Then nothing. Silence. I didn't sleep. It was deeper than sleep, like being pulled underwater and locked in place. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anything, just weightlessness. I remember thinking, so this is it. I saw nothing at first. No light, no tunnel, just blackness, stretching forever. But there was still sound, distant at first. Sirens. A voice yelling my name. Then everything slowed down, like time had cracked and was leaking out in pieces. I saw flashing red and blue, but not through my eyes. It was like I was above it all, watching someone else's story. The paramedics worked over my body. I could see that. My hair was matted with blood, my arm bent at a strange angle. My chest wasn't moving. I should have been panicking, but I felt strangely calm. Not at peace, just absent, like whatever made me had slipped out of place. Then came the silence. Thick, crushing, the kind that doesn't echo, the kind that feels alive. And in that silence, I began to feel something stir, something just beyond the dark. I wasn't alone. That was the moment I knew. My body was still there, but I was somewhere else. I didn't wake up in the hospital. I didn't wake up to the beeping of machines or the sound of nurses moving around. I woke up to darkness, not the kind you feel when your eyes are closed. This was heavier, dense, complete, like it swallowed everything. I couldn't see my hands, couldn't even feel my hands. I couldn't feel my body at all, but I was still me. I was still aware. I could still think. And that terrified me. I was floating or falling. I couldn't tell which. There was no ground, no sky, no sense of direction, just drifting, existing in nothing. Then, slowly, sounds began to reach me, not from outside, but from within. Echoes, memories. I heard my own voice, young and uncertain, whispering prayers in the dark of my childhood bedroom. Ya Allah, are you there? I heard myself asking, do you hear me? My voice was small, so small. Then another echo, me again, older this time, crying quietly in the bathroom at work after another long day of pretending I was okay. I'm tired, I whispered. Why does it feel like you're not listening? Another sound, my breathless sobs after an argument with my mother, when she told me I was losing my way. I'm trying, I had wept. I don't even know who I am anymore. These voices from my past floated around me, each one hitting me like a wave. The more I heard, the more I remembered. The more I remembered, the heavier the space around me became. I tried to cry out. My mouth didn't move, but my soul did. I screamed from the deepest part of me, where am I? God, where are you? But no answer came, not even an echo, just more silence. And in that silence, something began to settle in, a terrible realization that all my life, I had gone through the motions. I had followed rules, worn the right clothes, said the right words, but I never really knew him. I had prayed with my lips but doubted with my heart. Now I am here, wherever here was, and I wasn't sure if I was alone, because God wasn't real, or because I had never truly known him. As I floated in that thick, crushing silence, something began to change. At first, I thought it was my imagination, a flicker, the tiniest glimmer far off in the distance, so faint I barely noticed it. But it grew. Slowly, steadily, the darkness around me began to retreat. Not all at once, not like a curtain being pulled back. It was more like the light itself had life, like it was breathing. And as it got closer, I felt something I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever presence. The light wasn't blinding. It was soft but strong, not warm in a physical sense, but in a way my soul felt. And with it came a weight, not heavy but holy. I felt it pressing on every part of me. I was exposed, laid bare, not just in body but in spirit. Every hidden thought, every unspoken question, every silent doubt. He stepped into the center of that light. A man. No fire, no thunder, no sword, just a quiet strength. His face wasn't like anything I'd ever seen, yet somehow it felt familiar. He looked at me, not with anger, not with disappointment, but with eyes that saw everything, and still they didn't turn away. I wanted to hide. I wanted to vanish. All the things I'd buried, the doubts, the fear, the bitterness, they rose like smoke in front of him. I braced myself for judgment, but instead he spoke. Layla, he said gently, you've been seeking me, but not knowing who I am. His voice wasn't loud. It was still, clear, but it carried a weight that shook me from the inside out. It was the kind of voice that didn't just speak to your ears, it spoke to your soul. I froze. Jesus. I didn't want to believe it. My mind raced. No, it can't be. He's a prophet, not this. This isn't right. I've followed my faith, I've honored God, I've obeyed. Haven't I? But all my defenses cracked under the weight of that light. I wasn't angry, I was broken. Tears filled the space where my body used to be. I wasn't just confused, I was undone. And for the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying and beautiful at once. I had been searching for God my whole life, and he came to find me. The light around us shifted, and suddenly I wasn't standing in that space anymore. I was watching, like scenes from my life were being played before me. At first, they looked familiar. I saw myself as a child kneeling beside my mother during prayer. I remembered the scent of her perfume, the softness of the carpet. I saw the way I copied her movements, perfect, precise, respectful. Then I saw myself as a teenager, wrapped in my hijab, standing with the women at the back of the mosque. I was always quiet, always obedient. I remembered the pride in my father's eyes when I memorized verses. I saw the way people in our community praised me. Mashallah, she's so devout, they'd say. But then something happened. The images lost their color. They dimmed. The prayers I had once seen as beautiful now looked empty, rehearsed. My lips moved, but my eyes were blank. My body bowed, but my heart was cold. I watched myself perform act after act of worship, clean, proper, impressive on the outside. But there was no life in them, no love, no connection. I turned to the figure beside beside me, Jesus, and he looked at me with such steady eyes. You honored tradition, he said quietly, but you never knew the truth. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend myself. I had been faithful. I had tried so hard. I followed every rule. I stayed away from what was forbidden. I never questioned my duty. But then he showed me the reason behind it all, and that broke me. I saw the fear in my own eyes. Fear of getting it wrong. Fear of being rejected. Fear of dishonoring my family. My worship had not come from love. It had come from survival, from shame, from cultural pressure. I didn't pray because I wanted to be close to God. I prayed because I didn't want to burn. I wore the scarf not out of love for him, but because I didn't want the whispers or the judgment. My whole life I had obeyed, but I hadn't known him. And standing in that light, with no lies left to hide behind, I finally admitted the truth. I had built my faith on fear, not on God. The light shifted again, and suddenly we stood in a place I can only describe as silent. But it wasn't the kind of silence that feels peaceful. It was heavy, full, like the room itself was holding its breath. There were no walls, but I felt surrounded. All around me were echoes, not voices exactly, more like thoughts, my questions, my cries. I heard myself at 10 years old lying in bed, whispering into the darkness, God, do you see me? At 16, sitting behind the mosque, afraid to go home after a fight with my father. Why do you feel so lonely? At 22, after a friend's sudden death, staring at the sky. Is there really more after this, or are we just pretending? So many questions, so many moments I never dared say aloud. Not to my parents, not to the imam, not even to myself sometimes. And Jesus, still standing beside me, looked at me with the kind of expression that held both sorrow and love. I heard everyone, he said. You thought I was far away, but I was calling. I shook my head. I never heard you. You did, he said gently. You just didn't know it was me. I began to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs I couldn't control. He began to speak again, but now he was reciting my private thoughts. Thoughts I had never even voiced. Things I had felt so ashamed of I buried them deep. I'm tired of being perfect. I don't know who I am outside of rules. If God really loves me, why don't I feel it? I wish I could be seen without being judged. I want to be loved just as I am. Each sentence he spoke pierced me, not because they were accusations but because they were true, and because he knew them, all of them. I fell to my knees though I had no body, and I wept. I had spent my whole life thinking God was silent, distant, cold, but he had been listening, not to my words but to my heart, and all this time he hadn't been ignoring me. He had been calling me home. The silence faded and the space around us shifted once more. Before me now stood a mirror, but it wasn't like any mirror I had ever seen. It didn't reflect my face or my body. It reflected something deeper, my soul. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. And what I saw made my breath catch. At first it looked noble, righteous. I saw years of fasting, long nights in prayer, covering myself, respecting elders, studying scripture. All the things I believed made me good. But then the mirror changed. It peeled those actions back like layers. And underneath, fear. So much fear. Fear of hell, fear of shame, fear of being seen as weak or faithless, fear of my parents' disappointment, fear of community judgment, fear of punishment. Every good deed I thought I had done out of faith had actually been done to keep from being punished, from being rejected, from being seen as unworthy. I looked away, ashamed. But Jesus spoke again. You obeyed without knowing me, he said. His voice wasn't angry, it was steady, patient. I thought obedience was love, I whispered. He paused. Would you still serve if you knew I loved you first? His words hit me like a wave. I had never considered that. I had always believed I had to earn love, especially God's. I thought love came after obedience, not before. I stared back into the mirror. I saw flashes of myself praying, my lips moving, my forehead touching the floor, but my heart empty. My thoughts are distracted, my soul is distant. You lived under the weight of duty, he said, but you were never meant to carry it alone. Tears welled up again, not out of guilt this time, but grief. Grief over how many years I had spent trying to please a God I thought only tolerated me, a God I feared more than loved. But in his presence now I felt no condemnation, only sorrow and hope. Because for the first time in my life, I wondered what it would feel like to follow God, not to avoid punishment, but because I was already loved. The mirror faded, and suddenly I stood at a crossroad. Two paths stretched before me, one to the left, one to the right. Each was vivid, more real than anything I'd ever seen in a dream or memory. The first road was familiar. It looked like the life I had known. Worn stone, straight lines, order. It was lined with rituals, traditions, rules stacked like heavy stones on every side. People walked along it, some hunched over under invisible burdens. Their faces looked tired, hollow. They moved out of obligation, not joy. This is the road built on performance, Jesus said beside me. It's the life you lived, checking boxes, striving to earn love you already longed for. I swallowed hard. The road had seemed safe from the outside, but now I saw how heavy it truly was, how every step had been filled with anxiety, fear that one wrong move would ruin everything, that I was always being watched, always coming up short. Then I looked to the second path. It was narrower, wilder. It didn't have the neatness of the first, but it glowed with a kind of warmth I couldn't explain. There was peace there, not comfort but peace, a calm that wrapped around your bones, a freedom that didn't come from getting everything right but from being held even when you didn't. This is the road of grace, Jesus said. It's not about doing for me, it's about knowing me. My knees felt weak. I had spent my whole life trying to do for God, serve Him, please Him, represent Him, but I didn't know Him. I had feared Him, obeyed Him, tried to impress Him, but I had never trusted Him to simply love me. The peaceful road was beautiful but terrifying, because it meant surrender, letting go of control, releasing my need to earn everything. It meant stepping away from the only system I'd ever known. I looked at him torn. What if I choose wrong? He touched my shoulder gently. The invitation has always been open. I'm not asking you to follow religion. I'm asking you to follow me. Tears streamed down my face. For the first time I saw clearly. This was not about abandoning my culture or my past. It was about choosing truth over performance, love over fear, relationship over religion, and I wanted it. The crossroad faded, and I found myself in a new place, still with Jesus beside me, but this time the atmosphere felt heavier, not dark like before, but sorrowful. My chest tightened. They won't understand, I whispered. Jesus nodded. They might not now. Then why show me? Why ask me to choose this if it will break everything I know? His eyes were soft but unwavering. Because truth isn't always accepted, but it always sets free. I looked again at the faces. I saw pride in some, fear in others, but underneath I saw something deeper. Hunger. A longing they didn't know how to name. The same longing I had carried for years. The same ache that had brought me here. You've asked me to use you, Jesus said gently. But the vessel must first be willing to be emptied. I fell to my knees. I don't want to hurt them. You won't, he answered. But truth often feels like pain before it becomes peace. Let me carry what you cannot. He reached out his hand and touched my shoulder. Warmth filled me again. Not comfort in the worldly sense, but assurance, strength. He wasn't promising an easy path. He was offering something deeper. Purpose. You were born into tradition, he said, but you were made for the truth. Tears streamed down my face again, this time not from fear but from clarity. I saw the cost, and still I said quietly, I will follow you, even if I was misunderstood, even if I stood alone, because now I knew I never truly would be. Jesus looked at me with eyes that saw everything, my doubts, my failures, my fear, my shame, and yet there was no condemnation in him, only a steady, unshakable love. He reached out slowly and placed his hand over my heart. The moment his palm touched me, something broke. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was deep, gentle, final, like a chain quietly snapping after years of tension. And then warmth, pure living warmth flooded through. He raised his hand and suddenly I saw faces, familiar ones, my parents, my siblings, cousins, friends from the mosque, people I had grown up with, laughed with, prayed beside. Their images hung in the air like living memories. They weren't angry, not yet, but I could feel it coming. Jesus didn't speak right away, but I could sense what he was about to show me. And then it hit, a wave of pain, rejection, the sound of voices saying, you betrayed us, you left the truth, you were deceived. I saw myself trying to explain, to speak of what I had seen, but their eyes grew colder. They weren't just confused, they were wounded, afraid. And in that fear I became their enemy, not physical heat, but something that moved into the core of who I was. It filled the cracks I didn't even know I had. Every wound, every unanswered question, every ounce of striving, gone. In their place, peace. And then I wept, not just tears rolling down my cheeks, but full uncontrollable sobs like a child coming home after being lost. I fell into him, not with my body, because I still wasn't fully physical, but with everything I was. I felt held, secure, known, and entirely loved. You've spent your whole life searching, Jesus said softly, for approval, for identity, for love. This is what you've been looking for. I couldn't speak. All I could do was weep. I had prayed thousands of prayers in my life, followed rules, fasted, memorized verses, but nothing ever made me feel like this, not even close. This wasn't religion, this was love, a love that didn't demand I earn it, a love that came to me. Jesus leaned close. His voice was like music and truth at the same time. You are forgiven, you are chosen, you are mine. My weeping turned into laughter. A strange joy rose up from deep inside, raw, real, whole. For the first time, I wasn't trying to be anything. I wasn't trying to impress God. I wasn't trying to be enough. I simply was, and that was enough for him. Then he pulled back just slightly and said, Layla, it's time. My heart sank a little. Time for what? To go back, he said gently. They need to know, not just what you saw, but what you received. Take this love with you. It's what the world is dying for. I nodded slowly, not knowing how I'd do it, but somehow knowing I must. And then just like that, the light began to fade. But the love stayed, I gasped. The air rushed into my lungs like fire and ice at the same time. My eyes flew open. Blinding white lights swam above me. The beep of machines, voices shouting, a mask over my face, pain in my chest, sharp, deep, alive. I was alive. I was back. Doctors swarmed me. A nurse shouted something I couldn't understand. One of them said, "She's breathing. She's back." I felt hands pressing on my body, machines tugging, wires everywhere, but all I could do was cry. Tears ran down my face uncontrollably, like they were coming from somewhere far deeper than my body. I couldn't stop them. I didn't want to. It wasn't just relief. It was grief, wonder, overwhelming love. I had seen Jesus. I had touched mercy, and now I was here again. The pain was real, but it didn't matter. I turned my head slightly and saw my mother in the corner of the room, clutching a string of prayer beads, her face pale and wet with tears. My younger brother stood beside her, frozen, as if afraid I might slip away again. Their presence should have been comforting, but I felt a strange gap, like I'd crossed into a place they couldn't yet understand. Then my eyes fell on the Quran on the table beside my bed. Its green cover, gold edges, just as familiar as my own name. But it looked different now. Not bad, just distant, like something I had been inside for years but hadn't seen clearly. My heart didn't reject it, but it didn't anchor me anymore either. Something deeper had replaced it. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Jesus," not loud, just a breath. But saying his name again out here in this world felt like drawing water from a well I hadn't known existed. I felt him near, not like a memory, but like a presence that had followed me back. One of the nurses leaned in. "She's conscious. She's going to be okay." They called it a miracle, said I should have died, that the damage from the crash should have left me in a coma or worse. But somehow I came back, whole. I knew the truth. I didn't just survive. I had been sent. The days after the hospital were a blur of slow walks, quiet meals, and long sleepless nights. I was recovering, but not just physically. Something had shifted inside me, deeply, permanently. When the house fell silent at night, I would sit up in bed and stare at the ceiling. The name of Jesus echoed in my heart like a song I couldn't forget. Not loud, just steady. It wasn't like I was trying to reject everything I had known. It was that I couldn't go back. I had seen too much. The Quran still sat on my shelf. I didn't throw it away. I couldn't. It has been part of my life since I was a child. But now I needed to understand what had happened to me. I needed to know who Jesus really was, not just through the filter of religion or culture, but truly. So one afternoon while my family was out, I opened my laptop and typed, "Jesus in the Bible." That simple search led me to more than I could have imagined. I found the Gospel of John. I started reading just out of curiosity at first, but with every word something inside me stirred. His words weren't just text on a screen, they felt alive. When I read, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me," my breath caught. That was exactly what he had said to me. I began reading secretly every night, quietly, carefully, but with growing hunger. Then something strange happened. I stumbled upon a testimony, a woman also from a Muslim background, who had met Jesus during a near-death experience. She told her story like she was reading my heart. I reached out to her online. That conversation opened a door I never knew existed. Soon I was connected with others, people from places like Egypt, Iran, Sudan, even here in Canada, who had met him in dreams, visions, even death. Some had been beaten, others disowned, but all of them had the same thing in their voice: peace. I started attending a small Bible study in secret. It was held in someone's living room. I sat in the corner, afraid to even introduce myself fully. But when we sang quietly, nervously, I felt the same warmth I had felt when Jesus touched my heart. I wasn't alone. When I finally told my story, my real story, some people walked away. A cousin blocked me. An old friend said I was brainwashed. My own father refused to speak to me for weeks. The cost was real. But peace? Greater. I had found what I'd been searching for all my life. And still I wasn't trying to start debates. I didn't want to argue. I just couldn't stay silent. Because someone out there was like me, praying 5 times a day, fasting, obeying, but still feeling far from God. And maybe, just maybe, my voice could help them realize they're not alone. So I started sharing my story, first in small circles, then online, carefully, prayerfully. The reactions were mixed, but the messages I got in secret told me I was doing what I was called to do. And now I wake every morning not with fear, but with a sense of purpose. I still face questions. I still wrestle. But I no longer wonder if I'm loved, or if God hears me. I know him, I walk with him, and I want you to know him too. Because I used to think faith was all about rules, fear, and shame. I thought God was distant, silent, waiting for me to earn his approval. But I was wrong. I met the one who is truth. His name is Jesus. He didn't condemn me. He called me. And if you're still breathing, he's still calling you too.